It's creepy, disturbing, unsettling. These are the responses I got when I posted the new design of my musketeer piece for my board game. And you know what? They're right. It is creepy and uncanny, but maybe that's the point. Some call it ugly, but I call it art. If you're new here, my name is Julian, and on this channel I've been documenting my journey of creating the ultimate strategy board game, Pincer: A Gentleman's Ward. In this game you'll expand your empire by building colonies, managing resources, and most importantly, facing your opponents on the battlefield. Head over to my website, playpincer.com, and join the email list so you'll be notified as soon as we launch our publishing campaign. Today I'll be sharing my experience of hiring 3D artists and coming up with a design for the musketeer and the cavalry piece for my board game, and why I went with an unconventional look that some people call uncanny and ugly. No, this was not a mistake. I know it's uncanny. I know it's unsettling, but that's sort of the point, and we'll get into why that is later on in the video. But first I'll share some of the previous designs that I considered and why they didn't work and why I chose to go with this piece. This is the current design for the musketeer in my board game, and I like it. The problem is I don't own the rights to it. I designed almost all the 3D printed pieces in my game except for two, the cavalry piece and the musketeer. I've explained this in other videos, but I'm not exactly a 3D artist. I can do what I call non-organic shapes. Think of objects and things. So for my board game, it would be the walls, the colonies, even the frigate. But for some reason, I struggle with the organic shapes, such as the musketeer and the cavalry piece. I've tried several times, but it doesn't come naturally to me. And if you think the new design for the musketeer is uncanny, you should see some of the ones I tried making. They were not good at all. And so this is fine, this is why you outsource things while you're developing a board game. I try to do as much as I can myself, but there are certain things I have to be honest about and hire artists to do that. And so the first artist I found was on Freelancer, and if you don't know anything about that, it's just a website where you can hire artists anywhere from video editors to voice actors, and they're usually pretty on demand and a decent price. So I went there first and I found what I thought was a pretty good 3D artist, and I hired him to design the musketeer and the cavalry piece, and he did a great job. They're actually the ones that I use for the intro in my YouTube channel. There was sort of a language barrier between us, which made it hard to communicate with him, but besides that, I think he did a good job and he delivered them on time. And if anyone's curious, I think it was $300 a piece to have those designed. Now, those are not UV mapped, and if you know anything about 3D modeling, UV mapping is where you unwrap your model so you can then color and texture it, and that's a lot of work. So I think if he had textured it, it probably would have been a lot more, but I don't really need that for 3D printing. So I eagerly sent the 3D files to Dan to have them 3D printed. He is my 3D printer, and he's done great work. He printed all the pieces for my game so far, and I would highly recommend him. He does very good work, and I'll be using him to print the 3D pieces when I publish. He's really guided me through this process, been a great help, and I'll link his website below. So he gets the files and emails me back and says that these pieces cannot be 3D printed. The sword was too thin, other parts were too thin, there's a lot of right angles, overhanging edges, and it just would not 3D print well. So this was very disappointing to say the least, considering how much money I spent on that. So I licked my wounds and looked on the upside because while I liked the design, I thought that it could probably be better. And so this time I went to cgtrader.com and I found a portfolio of someone that I liked a lot, and I hired him to make the piece. And this is the part where, at least in my experience, I wish I'd known this, because it's sort of hard to tell off people's portfolios, I think, if they are actually experienced or not. Because when I received this model back, I think it was pretty apparent that he did very little modeling and actually just pulled assets off the internet. The face and the hat, for example, I know were not custom, and I think he definitely just found them online somewhere and sort of assembled this 3D model and sent it to me. And that was disappointing, obviously, and I didn't like it at all. I don't think it looked good, and so I immediately just paid him and moved on, because I don't even think that he would be capable of designing this piece, and I didn't want to waste my time with it. And so with this in mind, I tried one more time on CG Trader, and this time instead of messaging an artist directly, I posted a project and people could sort of bid on it and basically tell me why they think they would be good at designing it and showcase their portfolio to me. And this led to another mistake I made because I received a message from someone and they had beautifully summed up why they would be a good fit for this project. They reiterated the project details in their message. They showcased their portfolio. And so I thought, yes, this is a great fit, and I hired him. Now, the message they sent me for the bid, looking back, I am pretty sure was generated by an AI bot because it regurgitated what I wanted perfectly and sent it back to me. And after hiring him, I quickly learned that there was a language barrier between us. And it was very hard to communicate with him, unfortunately. And he had a hard time understanding me. Nothing against him, but, it was really important to me to articulate to my designer what I wanted and communicate the vision I have for this piece. And I just don't think it clicked between us. So now he did end up making a very solid piece. I actually like this design a lot. It reminds me of a chess piece, and some of you may even like it better. But, here's the complaint I have for him, because it was very important to me that we communicate and I can articulate my vision to him about this piece. And I made it very clear that I didn't want the piece to look like the reference image that I sent them. I want an artist's viewpoint. I want their take, their interpretation, and their own creative vision to shine through. And he didn't do any of that. He didn't take any inspiration from the other images I sent him. He didn't really make it his own. He basically just modeled exactly the reference image I sent him, which I told him I didn't really necessarily want it to look like, but it would be a starting place. Even though it turned out nice, it wasn't quite what I was going for or hoping for. And I told him this, and I think he understood, but I moved on from there. And it was at this point that I came across some chess pieces from the 18th century. I think they were called Lewis Chessmen chess pieces, something like that. And I fell in love. I think they're the coolest design ever. And I knew that I wanted something like that for my game. And so what did I do? I threw more money, hired an artist at the design. But this time I tried to be a little more careful, and I rethought my approach. Like I said, I really wanted an artist. I wanted someone that could put forth their own creativity, have their own vision for my game that complements it, and not just take what I tell them and regurgitate it right back to me. I want to see an actual artist input on it. And that's when I went to YouTube and Instagram and deliberately searched out artists that are showcasing their creativity and their portfolio. And I would message them or comment on their videos to see if they'd be interested in working on a project. And I was a little surprised because I didn't hear back from anyone. I must have messaged 20 people or more, and I got no responses from any artists. And, I know people are busy. They have their own things going on, but I'm willing to pay, and I'm willing to hear out the rate that they have and, see if we can make something work. But it seems as if there is no interest in making this piece. And so I went back to Freelancer, and I found another artist on there. There's still a little bit of a language barrier, but I think he did understand me. But this time I stopped and thought, I just can't keep throwing money at these designs. I need to just really settle on what I want this piece to look like, and I'll just have them make it exactly, and we'll walk through the process together. I'll critique it, and I'll just get exactly what I want, because I don't think that artists are really interested in collaborating on this and really putting their creative vision into it, which is fine. And so, borrowing from inspiration of the Lewis Chessmen pieces, I came up with this design look, and this is what everyone thinks is ugly, and it is ugly. Someone said that it's going to give them nightmares, so you're welcome for that. But I think there's a certain charm to it, and the uncanniness is what I really like about it. I like weird sometimes, and one of the things that's always inspired my game are old playing cards, old French-suited playing cards from the 16th, 17th century. I think they're the coolest thing ever. And if you look closely at the faces, they're always very uncanny. They're almost creepy looking. And that's part of the intrigue to me. And it's fascinating to me what people find uncanny and creepy throughout time and history. I mean, look at Ronald McDonald back in the day. I'm sure kids thought he was funny, he was silly, and we look at him now and we just think that it's very creepy, very uncanny. And it's interesting how did the people in that time period find them uncanny and creepy, or was it sort of fun and, normal to them? I don't know. To me personally, though, I just really love this piece. I like that there's a sadness about him. I know someone said in the comments that it's almost as if he's seen the horrors of war, and I like that. I think that the most obvious approach when making this piece would be to make, a real gritty, like mean-looking red coat that just looks like he's out for blood. But I think it's interesting to take a different approach and show maybe that there's a sadness to war and create a piece that sort of has that 1,000-yard stare maybe. But if you hate the piece, I ask you maybe just, give it some time. I think it might grow on you, especially when you consider all the new art that I've been creating for my game. I have a vision in my head and I think that I can see it clearly, but not everyone can right now. But the vision I have, this piece really fits well into it with the new art style, is sort of veering off my original intent for it. It's becoming less elegant and refined and more fantasy and maybe almost older in time. The art almost looks more maybe 16th century than 18th century. And, I think that's fine. I mean, I always say my game is meant to be in the 18th century, but at the end of the day, this is a fantasy world. This is make-believe, and I think it's fun to sort of craft my own world, and I feel like I'm seeing it come alive before my eyes as I recreate all this. I feel like I'm making a whole world, and yes, it pulls elements from the 18th century, but aesthetically, if I like something that looks more 16th century, I might put it in there, and I think that this piece is a great example for that. It may be less refined than the other pieces, but I think it really fits this new vision I have for my game. But also this piece is going to be very small. I mean, you're really not even going to be able to tell what expression he's making. It's going to be the basic shape that you really see and interact with, but it will be useful for things like Tabletop Simulator. If I want to put him in there, you'll be able to see detail more clearly, or I might use him for the intro of my channel, stuff like that. So I do want him to have the detail there if I need it later on down the road. But for the game, I mean, you're not really going to see it necessarily, which is a shame. I know some of you may be thrilled about that, but I've actually been going through and remodeling a lot of the pieces. The frigate in particular is being remodeled because I actually modeled the first one off of a galleon, or galleon, however you say that, and even though I call it a frigate, it really isn't shaped or doesn't look like a frigate at all. So I wanted to design a new piece that looked more like a frigate or a ship of the line. I also need to make it more suited for 3D printing, so I made the mast very thick, the sails very thick, and I think this piece is going to look very nice and be more historically accurate. Now I do need my cavalry piece designed, and I actually finally did hear back from one of the Instagram artists that I had reached out to. She's the only one that ever reached back, so I think she'll be modeling the cavalry piece, hopefully. I think I'll be able to communicate with her a lot clearer and be able to articulate my design or my vision for the game, and hopefully she can bring her own creative input as well. But let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like this design or do you hate it? Either way, I ask you to give it a chance, and I think it may grow on you. As I've been saying the past few videos, I really see the vision for this game coming to life. Things are finally falling into place that I've been sitting on for a year now, and the art's coming together, and I would love to start a Kickstarter within a few months. I don't want to jump the gun on it, but when I'm ready and I feel confident that I know everything I need to, we're launching it, we are taking off, and I'm very excited for that. So make sure you sign up for the email to be alerted as soon as we launch our publishing campaign, playpincer.com. Thank you all so much for coming along this journey with me. I'll see you soon. Farewell.